Here, I should not look at your screen. All right. Anyways, so I wrote this presentation on Spring Boot. We use it where I currently work, and I used it at overstock.com as well. And when I first ran into Spring Boot, I remember telling one of my coworkers of how I like that Ruby on Rails makes it so easy to get up and running with a web app. And he's like, well, you should take a look at Spring Boot. And then a few weeks later, we started using Spring Boot at the company. And I've had nothing but good experiences with it so far, and it really does speed up development. So the agenda tonight is I'm going to, within the first hour, explain version of control, explain a lot of the main features in Spring Boot that I like. And it has so many features, so I can't cover them all within the first hour. And then the second hour, or half of the meeting, I'm going to try to quickly develop a Spring Boot application with my cheat sheets. And you guys get to see me coding it live, and also cheat from my already working example. That will receive a request from my browser, receive the request, and then create a record in the Postgres database that is running in a Docker container, and then write the same data with the primary key generated in Postgres into Redis, into MongoDB, into Cassandra, and then the result of that also put in a message queue on RabbitMQ using a minimal amount of code, because Spring Boot makes it easy to do this sort of stuff very quickly. And so that's what I want to demonstrate today. I want to go over the features of Spring Boot, and then a quick coding exercise on developing a fast app that integrates with a lot of different technologies. So that's the agenda for today. Now, in my own words, Spring Boot is an application template for console or web applications with production-ready features built on the Spring framework that integrate many of the most popular persistence, NoSQL, messaging, templating, and internet services. Those are in my words. It allows you to do all of that very quickly. But I'm going to show you their words instead. I went to their website, found this information. I think the most important step that they want to say is that it is an opinionated view on how to build production-ready applications. As you see, it integrates with various web servers in there. Pretty much takes over the palm for you. Automatically configure Spring whenever possible. Production-ready features are already in the system if you enable them. And no code generation, no XML required. That is in their words. But in order to use Spring Boot, you have to learn how to use inversion of control. So I'm going to bring up the design pattern called the strategy design pattern. You see it quite often in Spring applications, and that's where you have an interface that defines something like a data access object or a business logic service. It's just the interface, and then you have multiple or just one implementations of it. Whenever you see Spring applications, you quite often see that design pattern used, and it's used heavily in Spring applications, so I wanted to bring it up. And quite often, when you develop an application, you have a set of data access classes. Those are called repositories in Spring. And you have business services, which are utilized within your application. And then maybe your main application or a web application that has to use those services and data access repositories. And typically, you create an object graph of these things, so that you wire them all together and then call them at the appropriate places within your application. There's ways to do that without Spring, but version of control makes it a lot easier. And I'll explain what a version control is within the code, because I think it'll be more clear. First of all, does everybody here know what a version of control is? I should have asked that in the beginning. Yes? Yes. Well, I'm going to explain it the way I view it, because I've tried many times to figure out what does it mean? Why is it called inversion of control? And for a long time, that puzzled me. And I was trying to figure it out. Why is it called inversion of control? That's such a weird name for this. I understand when it's called dependency injection, because it's obvious to me you have a value here and it gets injected for you, and that's how it works. But why the name inversion of control? So I will do a quick demo of that with code here right now. So that's why I put this part in there. So let's see, I have a lot of stuff in here. An application without inversion of control. I'll go over that real fast. All right, so this is my application. Really simple. It starts with main, but it's a Spring application. So you see Spring main called there, and what ends up happening is I have this implements command line runner. Therefore, when it runs, it ends up calling the run method. And what I do is I create a data source manually. I create a JDBC template manually from the data source that I just built right here. And I create a data access object manually, another data access object manually. Then I create a messaging service manually, and I provide that as parameters to my dependency graph. That is basically the application. So let me go to the dependency graph. It's just those services ready to be used so that my service can be called. So I'll quickly go over the different classes involved right here, just for the sake of the presentation. Just a simple data access object. Create a message and find messages by username. Create a username and find a username by the name of the person. Find the ID by the name of the person. A service, all it does is, if you give it a name and a message, well, if that name doesn't exist, it's going to create it for you. If it does, it's going to retrieve it for you, and then store all those messages in a database. And this one, well, what are all the messages that belong to this name? It's a really trivial application. And so how does my service, here's the implementation of it. It finds the name by ID. If it doesn't, it creates it. If it doesn't exist, it creates it. It's functional programming in Java. And then it creates all those messages. That's how the merge message works. And find message by username, well, it just, first it finds the username and then returns all the messages that belong to that username ID and in an array list. Pretty simple stuff. But this is not using inversion of control at all. This is done manually. But if you give up controlling it this way, meaning you're in complete charge right now, and you're not let anything get by you. If you give up that control and let a framework do all the wiring for you, that's why it's called inversion. It's being flipped upside down. You're giving it up and letting something else handle it for you. That's when I was researching the name, why is it called inversion of control? This is the only thing I could come up with. It's because you're giving up that control. So if I'm wrong about that, email me later. But that's what I was able to discover about it. So I'm going to quickly turn this into an application that uses dependency injection. So now I have to code things up. So, okay, here's the implementation. In Spring, this would be considered a repository. So I'm just going to annotate it repository. And we want to inject the name parameter template, so I'll call that auto-wired. Actually, That's fine. Same thing for the DAO. Actually, I should call it before I even do any of this. You guys want to see it run, right? Let me run this first. I'm going to run this right now. It exited. And it exited because it would have ran all of that over there. Okay. So I inserted those messages and then it found the messages. So the application did run and it did all that, right? You see that? It actually found those results. So now I'm gonna, instead of wiring it up manually, I'm gonna use Spring to do that. So you can do Spring really quickly. Okay, so let me go back here. Here. This is the repository again. And this here is again auto-wired. Here's the template. This is a service. So I allocate it as a service. And again, you're using auto-wiring. Those will get injected in here. I'll make this a component instead. Just again, auto-wired. And then the application itself, this becomes obsolete. That becomes obsolete. This becomes obsolete as well. And this method becomes obsolete as well. But what I can do is I could add the dependency graph. I can set it for it. Auto-wire it. And just run it at this point. I gave up the control of wiring everything myself, converted it to the Spring Framework version of control container. And now if I run it, I'm going to get the same results we had previously, which were the previous results. I'll run it again. Demo. It worked. Again, same code, compile. So here we have an example of an application that didn't use a version of control, and I quickly fired up to use that. So if you don't know what dependency injection and a version of control is, well, now you know. All right, I'll continue with the rest of Spring Boot. Okay. Features. Number one, Spring Boot has libraries that are developed for it that allow you to build it with these popular build systems: Maven, Gradle, Ant. I'm guessing at this point in time, Maven is probably the most popular standard for building applications, Java applications. I don't know how much traction Gradle has, but Gradle has more flexibility than Maven. Maven is really strict about it is a conventional configuration framework, and Gradle allows more free-form applications and integrates with Ivy, and you could still publish Maven dependencies and use Maven dependencies within a Gradle application. There's also Ant. You could also use Ant. I'm not a big fan of Ant, but some shops like it because it's not as complicated to understand as Maven or Gradle. But it is buildable by these three different frameworks. So whatever shop you have, I'm sure it's one of these three, and you could use it. So there's no excuse for not. This is not a good excuse for not using Spring Boot, if it is one of them for you. Developer tools. Now, this is one of my this is a pretty cool feature that I didn't learn until recently, but what it allows you to do is it allows you to develop in your IDE, and when you change the code, and if you use Eclipse, which automatically compiles things, your class path changes, it automatically reloads application for you. You don't have to hit stop and restart. You just leave it alone. It automatically reloads everything with the new changes that you just wrote. So that cuts down on the development time. It actually takes away the whole step of recompiling the whole app and rerunning it from the beginning. It has its own class loader to do that. It has 2 class loaders for it to function. Now, this doesn't run when this feature doesn't work when you're running it from the jar. This is when you are running it from an IDE. Another interesting feature that I never actually used, but I could see where it is useful, is if you are developing a remote application and you set things up properly with Spring Boot and the developer tools, you can connect to that remote application. And if it has the same class path and certain files in the right place, any changes you do locally will get pushed to the remote, and this class loader gets reloaded without having to reboot it. And so you can actually iterate more quickly on a remote server that you're developing if it is in a development mode with Spring Boot. And I think that can be useful. I've had situations where that would have been very handy in dev builds, not necessarily QA builds, but a dev build on a server that I'm developing on, and there's other developers working with me, and I needed to remote into it and change things. Well, I never had that ability before, but Spring Boot has that, and that could be very useful.
That includes Tomcat, like
yes.
Reload dynamically. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how that would work on Tomcat actually, but I can say that most people, when they write Spring Boot applications, they just run it, and it has Tomcat embedded. You don't usually deploy a WAR. It has the ability to deploy as a WAR file to a web.
Yeah, no, I just meant like even locally or whatever that you're doing. Well, when it said remote application, I wasn't sure if it's like firing.
It's like another machine.
Yeah, another machine, and it's passing the jar to your Tomcat server on another machine, or
your class path, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It syncs them over.
Oh, okay.
It's a pretty interesting feature, and I know this would have helped me in the past with certain applications that I was working on. I haven't used that one yet, but the automatic restart I think is a nice one. That will save a lot of time. Next feature. So Spring Boot uses these things called starter dependencies. They look like this. This is the Maven dependency, starter.springboot-starter.jdbc, for example. That's a Maven dependency that's shown above. There's the Jersey one. But it has all these starter dependencies. And as you can see, it integrates with a lot of different services out there. ActiveMQ, the Twitter's, what's it called? When you log in with a RESTful application. There's a word for that.
OAuth?
OAuth. Yeah, OAuth with Twitter, OAuth with Facebook, the different JCA providers like Atomicos, Elasticsearch, JDBC, the templating frameworks like Timeleaf, MongoDB, Redis, Cassandra, Solar, FreeMarker, which is another markup language, Couchbase, Tomcat, AMQP, HornetQ, Security, Redis, Mustache, another templating framework. So there's a lot of libraries to work with that are already developed for Spring Boot, and that's what actually makes it quick to develop with. All right, this is one of my favorite features about Spring Boot. It's called externalized configuration. If you go to their website and go to this tab, it has several, well, it's not really a page, it's one massive document. But it looks like maybe 10 pages on this topic alone. And I would say that they've implemented the best solution on how to get values from the command line or from some file or into your application runtime to be utilized and overridden when needed. They came up with a very sensible solution, the best that I've seen, better than what any other company tried to achieve on their own. As it states here, it can source the values from the parameters from the command line, from system properties, servlet parameters, JNDI, operating system environment, property files, or YAML files. And it has a precedence for dealing with a precedence that works. So your test, if you have a test case and you define your values in there, well, those are going to take the highest precedence because you want to run it. You want to run it within the test case phase. You don't want the OS to take over there. You want that to take the highest precedence. In another application, well, your command line arguments will have the highest precedence. So when you run it and you give the value that it should have, it takes over right there. The next level is a giant blob of JSON that you could give it with that parameter as a system property or an environmental variable. But then there's also the servlet parameters, JNDI parameters, system properties, OS environmental variables, and the profiles as well. I don't know if you guys know what Spring profiles are, but it allows you to state a set of name value pairs that only exists for a certain mode of the application. So you could have certain properties that only belong to production or some that are just for testing. They will get injected for you. So my example later on will go over this feature called external configuration. But I really like it, and it uses YAML, which is like JSON but has comments, and spaces are important in YAML. JSON, if you use pure JSON, that'll work, and you can add comments as well, which will not pass JSON lint, but it qualifies as good YAML. Now this is another feature that I like. It seems like it's not much, but they actually did it right. They configure logging for you that just works. A lot of companies struggle with which library to use, how to integrate all these different logging frameworks. It uses common logging, but it allows you to easily integrate with Logback and all of the different backends that SLF4j uses. It defaults to the console, but with just a command line parameter or an entry in your YAML file, it'll write to the file as well. The console output will be color coded. And I think to date, as I put it in red, provides the most sensible and flexible defaults that I've worked with. And it's their opinion on how it should be done, and I think they made the right choice there. Now this is a really cool feature, I think. It's called their actuator feature. And what it does is it provides features that allow you to manage and monitor your application. It has endpoints that if you point to that endpoint, it'll give you a complete list of beans, configuration properties that are passed in the application. It'll do a thread dump for you, and you get to read it right there. So if you're debugging the application, you could just point to that endpoint and have the thread dump. And it is a secure endpoint, by the way. You have to enable it, and you might even require authorization. You can secure it. The environmental properties are exposed. So it shows you which flyway database migrations have been applied. A health, showing you like how much disk space or which applications are up. Pardon?
What's Flyway?
Flyway is a database migration tool. It allows you to come up with a set of scripts and make sure they're applied, and it tells you.
Is it like a competitor Liquibase maybe?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like Liquibase, but different. It gives you metrics on application, like how many requests each endpoint in there received, trace of all the different HTTP requests that the application received. With just one dependency added to your application, all of these features are built in, exposed for you. No development time. It's just adding it to your BOM. I think that's a production. These type of features are needed in production. the health alone tells you how much disk space. I'm sure you guys have been to companies where the application fails because they didn't monitor disk space, and it'll tell you that. And it'll also tell you, like, is the database down? Is the messaging system down? Or I'll show you later in my application that all those other backends that I'm using, they're going to show up as up in the health endpoint.
And that's pretty easy to lock down in production.
They document how to do it, so I would say so. Let's see, persistence. So Spring Boot has nice defaults to work with JDBC, JPA, all of these NoSQL solutions and caching solutions. I put caching as part of persistence because it is about retrieving a data store and not having to retrieve it, having it locally. So there's more information on that on their site. It integrates with these different messaging platforms, JMS, the Advanced Message Queue Protocol, AMQP, RabbitMQ, and Kafka. They document how to deploy it on Cloud Foundry, Heroku, OpenShift, BoxFuse. Oops, there's a typo there. Amazon Web Services, the Google App Engine. That's embarrassing. And wow, we're ahead of schedule. That's good. And I think this is an important point not to be underestimated again, is that it is open and accessible. You can download all of its source code. You can try to commit to it, and they will have a good conversation with you about it. It has really good documentation on that reference page, Java docs. And I like open source because it tends to be higher quality. So it has a quick start page that allows you to choose the dependencies on there, and then it'll create a Maven app for you or Gradle app, one or the other. But you can also do it manually just by adding this parent POM or using this dependency management import and declaring everything manually, or you could go to this app to do it.
It's in the IDE now too, the SES IDE.
SES, I need.
The Springs STS, yeah, it's in there now. If you create like a Spring, like you create a new project and you say Spring, it'll give you a list of all the POMs, start POMs to select.
I never tried that idea.
Yeah.
Maybe I should check
So
that
it's
out.
pretty quick.
It's essentially it's Spring Source Tools, but it's actually
It's
built by
Eclipse.
it's Eclipse.
Yeah.
It's a modification built by the Spring team.
Okay. So I went through these slides really quickly, which is good. So we will take a quick break. And then when I come back, I will code the application for you guys. But before that, are there any questions about this? No?
Is there anything that you would prefer that they did differently with Spring Boot? Is there any weak spot that you can think of? Or is it pretty solid across the board?
My experience so far has been that it is very solid across the board. I think the only thing I could think of is that it is, although it uses a lot of, so Java has a lot of standards and specifications, and those are good. That's a good thing. But some things that become popular are not part of some standard or specification, including Spring itself. And Spring Boot integrates with a lot of standards and a lot of de facto standards or popular technologies, but it itself is not a standard. I don't know if that's a bad thing, but it could be if it takes over everything and then they're the only implementation of it. I could see how that could be a problem, but I don't think it's a bad thing. That's the only thing I think of is that it is not
A standard.
it's standard,
Yeah.
but it works. So and it's worked for many years, so over a decade now. So they have a great track record. I wouldn't hold it against them, but if I had to be critical of only one thing, it would be that. It's not even
Isn't there a
fair.
new DI standard though?
Hmm?
I thought there was a new, in part of Java EE, there's a new standard for dependency injection. It would be interesting.
I forget the name of JSR, but you're talking about like at inject.
Yeah, something like that. And I'm wondering if this conforms to it, like the same way Hibernate conforms to JPA.
Yeah, but that's for app servers, so I don't think it's part of the JDK itself. It's more like you're gonna inject some values or inside of a service in an app server, whereas Spring can be used in any type of application. So I don't know. I don't know enough about the actual JSR that has that inject and where it can and cannot be used, but I've only seen it in app servers so far. Anybody else use them outside of a scope of an app server? No? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, for people online, sorry, we're gonna take a short break. And then I'm gonna start the coding exercise. I will put this on mute in the meantime. We'll time this for 10 minutes, and then I'll start the second half of the presentation.
Sweet. All right, time to gear up.
All right, we're back in the second half of the presentation. I'm gonna write code and hopefully get it done within an hour, what I'm trying to do. So I'm gonna go to switch to IDE, close that project. Well, it's all the same project. This is the live version of it. And this is the already implemented version of it. So this application uses these services. These are Docker services. There's a Postgres database, MongoDB, Cassandra, RabbitMQ. These are the ports that I need to connect to. The database I'm creating is called LAJug. Once I get these services running in Docker, I do have to do a little bit of configuration to those servers, minor, but there is some work that needs to be done there. So the first thing I'm going to do is get those applications running. And that will be done here. So on this first tab, let me clear it. Docker compose. Oh, hopefully it'll run smoothly. Looks like it's running smoothly. Sometimes I have out of space errors with Docker. It happens just before being recorded.
Images are huge.
Yeah. It's not that the machine doesn't have space, but it's limited as to how much space it can use. So let me verify that those services are up. Oh, yes. They're all up. Good. All right, so I have those services running right now, right? And that's really not part of the application that I'm writing, but I do need to connect with them. I do have a cheat sheet here. And the first thing I want to do is I want to create my key space in Cassandra. That already ran. And then I want to create my table in Cassandra. Then I want to go to RabbitMQ and create a queue called LAJug. So let me log into RabbitMQ. See which queues are here. For some reason, my credentials still work. I don't know why. LAJug, that's the name of my queue. I'm adding it. And I click on it, and it should be empty. The queue is empty. So now I have these, where is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 services running. And nothing's happening, they're just running in the background. But I need them for my application, so I want to write them first. Now, this application with Kitchen Sink Live was pretty much generated by going to, where's my presentation? By going to this starter page, start.spring.io, putting in this group ID, this artifact ID, and selecting these dependencies up there. And it generated a POM file that looks like this. I didn't touch this POM file. Did nothing to it. That's my group ID. Declares my parent as a Spring Boot starter parent. Defaults to JDK 8. And all of these Spring Boot dependencies. And the Spring Boot Maven plugin that creates a shaded jar that just runs. So you don't have to deploy to an app server like Tomcat. All right. Why is that there? I don't know why that's there. Let me delete that. Okay, so I'm going to cheat real fast because This is a live demo and there's a lot of pressure to get it right. What did I do? Okay, entities. So a lot of it depends on entities. I'll make an API package as well. Oops, I don't know what I did there. Yeah. And I want to write an entity for those 4 things. The Cassandra, Postgres, Redis, and what is it called? MongoDB. And actually, what I should first do is I should actually configure this application to talk to those backends. And the way you do that is you create a YAML file. That's the way I prefer to do it. I don't need that. I'm just going to rename this to application by YAML. Instead of using that, let me say for minute, I think close those. And if you go to the Spring website, and I'll go there right now. It tells you plainly on which properties are used to configure an application. They tend to be, those properties are at the bottom, I believe. Looking at the table of contents, I can just get there. Was it? No. These are the versions of what it uses? Okay. All the versions. Oh, all the properties that it uses. And I had to hunt down what are the different properties and the defaults for these applications that I wanted to put in my YAML file to connect to them. Most of them made sense, but I already did the work before, so I'm going to take the shortcut and just copy the values that I already have and explain them to you. I'll copy these. I'll put them in here. So I did put a comment, and those comments are actually still in front of the website. The name of my application is called Kitchen Sink. Since my application uses JAX-RS, Jersey, and since Spring Boot works with Spring MVC by default, they both are initially mapped to the same servlet path. So I don't want that clash. So I'm mapping Spring's MVC servlet to /system. And then I'm letting Jersey control the root path. That's what this does. I'm turning off security on the actuator endpoints so I can just call them right now. It works with Jackson, and I'm telling it to pretty print it's JSON. I'm telling it here to use this Postgres database, this username and this password, and the Postgres driver. This is actually not required because it realizes from here that it is Postgres. Here I'm configuring RabbitMQ. Username, yes, password, yes. And the key space name for Cassandra. Now, the defaults for MongoDB and Redis work. So I didn't even bother configuring that. The fact that it's on the class path builds these dependencies over here. Redis and MongoDB and AMQP, which actually has the dependencies for RabbitMQ. the fact that it has those dependencies, it actually did all the work automatically within those libraries to configure itself. So that saves me a lot of time. But I had to have the knowledge that it does that for me. So we're knowledge workers, don't forget that. Okay, so all of my backends are now ready to use. Now, another thing that I want to do is design a database. So the way Spring Boot works, the way Flyway works, if you have a directory in your class path called database migrations, in the resources directory, it'll pick up those files if they have a certain file format and merge them into your database like Liquibase does. But I use Flyway. I think it's a little easier than Liquibase. So I'm not going to write the database on the fly, but it's a really simple schema. Actually copy this file over. There's only one in here. All right, so my schema. Table called Postgres messages with a primary key and with the ID and a column called message that has a message in there. That's it. It's a really dumb schema, but this is a demo, so I don't want it too complicated. So this application doesn't do much, but I'm going to run it right now because it does do something right now. If I run it right now, there's still a lot to demonstrate. So I'm running it. Oh, and there's an error, of course. What is my error? DB migration. Resources, DB migrations. There you go. Let's try that again. So I did a lot of work there. As you see, it mapped all of these actuator endpoints, and it actually applied my migration somewhere. I gotta find that. Anybody see it? At the bottom?
I think you got a much better shot than I do.
The word migration did show up.
I'd control F to see if it's there.
Yeah, validated one migration and applied it. There you go. So it actually has that there. So let's see what Postgres shows us. So here's my schema. And there's two tables. And as you can see, that SQL is applied to this. That migration is here. But I don't need to connect to Postgres for that information. We could actually go here and hit the endpoints that I listed. Where did I list them? I know I listed them earlier. All right, let's go through some of these. Thread done. So it's a web app, so of course that has a thread. It has a thread somewhere, right? But sometimes there's concurrency issues. If you need to troubleshoot them, they're all available right here. Leave me alone. What's another useful one? Flyway. It tells me which migrations are applied. So for troubleshooting an application, you guys change the database, you deploy it, having all sorts of exceptions under logs. What's going on? Oh, we're not up to date with the database up there. We have to migrate or something's up there. Wrong version of database. Our code doesn't work with this version. That's there. I do want this to leave me alone. Why is this? I'm not even trying to open that file. What other ones are there? Health. This is a nice one. Health. It's going to show me that I'm connected to all those services that are on the back end. So RabbitMQ is up, Redis is up, MongoDB is up, the database is up. Which kind of database? Cassandra, those are all up. We're healthy with this space. And the application is up. Good to know.
Cool.
You can actually go here, it puts my app name. But there's another plugin which I didn't put in the demo, which actually gives you the Git tag, commit ID, branch information in there, so you actually know which version of the application you're debugging that's live. That's very useful to know. I should have made that part of the demo. I hope this thing goes away because it's bugging me. I don't know what that's coming from.
I think it's going to copy over Postgres.
Anyways, and then metrics. Well, we made some requests already. So what showed up here? Those are just like operating system metrics. That's not trace. There's trace. Shows me all the requests that I made. On the wrong one. There you go. Well, too. Why did the application fail? We know what the requests were made, and there's a lot of cookies in here. Those are from my own application, I think, that I'm writing on my own time. What cookie is it?
I think when you come back in JSON, it seems like someone, like a front end, like a visualizer or something.
Well, I told it to pretty print the JSON, but yeah, it could. All right, so let me continue with the rest of this. I don't know what it's talking about, but okay. Okay, so that's there. Now, those are wired up. I want to create some entities that will that are part of those backend. So let me make a package called entities. Actually, where did I put this? This was already well thought out. Okay, I'll put it in there. This is actually more implementation than entities. So I actually covered that over here. So basically, all of our entities should follow a format similar to this. So let me write one first. So we want a Postgres entity. Postgres message. We want an ID, private long ID, and a string for the message. Auto-generate these. And since it is an entity for Postgres, JPA here, I'll label it as an entity. I will give it the name, because what it tries to do is it makes a table called Postgres message, but I used more reasonable naming conventions here. Have an underscore. And that's not how JPA works. You actually have to put that in there. I kind of wish it worked that way, but it doesn't. This is the primary key, so I'll give it ID. And I'm sorry, but I forget the code for labeling it as the auto recommend primary key. So I'm going to look that up real fast on my cheat sheet. I'm just going to copy all of this. It's up there because I don't remember that, and it would take about maybe 5 minutes Google to figure that out. So my ID is mapped. So this is a Postgres message. Okay. Now I want to expose that Postgres message as a RESTful service. No. So I will create a repository, which is the term that Spring Data uses for any place where data is persisted. They use the term repository. So let me create a repository here. A package for repository, that is. And let me implement it. Implementing is just providing an interface, actually. Post, press, message, repository. And that, all you do is say extends GPA repository. I remember that one. And I have a Postgres message in there. And its type is it's long. ID. All you got to do. Application is running, right? You know that. I'm not going to stop and start it because it has Spring Boot developer tools. And this is not Eclipse where it auto compiles everything. You can do that, but I don't like that because sometimes I don't want it to waste resources when I know I'm not done yet. But that's just me. So I'm just going to type make instead, which isn't do a full rebuild, but it does change the class path. It knows it, detects it, and it died. Not a managed type. Okay, what did I do wrong? Postgres message is an entity, public class, private. Okay, let me see what I did here different. Entity. Yeah, that looks normal.
Is the entity on your scan path?
Yeah, it is.
You don't need to add the repository annotation to the Postgres and message repository.
You know what? No, you got a good point. You're right. It's not in the scan path.
Yeah.
Um,
Probably where you define your application.
right. So I have to move this over here. I think I'm going to just start over. Now I'm going to run it because I don't know how it's going to react to that. It's a different name. I can't imagine it picking it up. So the default is you're in the scan path and everything below where you're located. I didn't have it in the right location. So I have that. And if I go here, I have a RESTful resource now. Well, I thought I would. What did I do wrong this thing? Postgres message does not exist. Damn, talk about demo. Is that the name of my schema? Messages. Okay. Let me compile again. We'll see it load. This time. All right, so now I have a RESTful resource already for Postgres messages. This accepts create, updates, and deletes. I get on the collection, I get on the ID. If I do find by name, it'll also expose that. in there. So let me try that. I've never done that before, but I'm just curious. So let me add that in here. Um, so it has finder methods. It has a whole syntax. If you actually go to JPA, it covers all of those rules, just like Ruby on Rails had dynamic finder methods. They're not really dynamic, but you get the point, right?
Yeah, they're statically compiled, but they're, yeah.
They call in Rails they call it dynamic finders, but
Yeah, Grail's the same thing, because it is kind of dynamic. But yeah, it is, I saw this, yeah. Josh Long kind of showed that feature. It's pretty cool. It kind of, I think there's something called Query Diesel, Query DSL.
okay, that didn't work. Didn't they have a type called name though? Message.
Message.
Find by message. Well, that kind of sucks. But I mean, you have to have a message to find the ID, I guess, right? So let's try that again. Make it's ready. Okay, let's go here again. Yeah, I don't see that in here, but profile. We could hit profile and see what's on this resource. Now, this is really hard to read. It ends up not being formatted, but it shows you that there is a find by message over here. Right, so let's go on to the other entities. So there's also, I'm also going to require a Cassandra message and a MongoDB message and a Redis message. So I'm just going to copy this. Actually, no, I'm not going to copy it, but let's start off with the Cassandra message. And I can copy all the annotations. The rest works. And I believe for Cassandra, it's also just considered entity. But I think it's a different type of entity. Multiple choices. Nope, I'm wrong. That's not what it's called. Let me go back here to my cheat sheet real fast. Table and primary key. Okay. So I'm gonna go back there. Cassandra mapping. Let me just see. Did my cheat sheet? What did I call it? I called it Cassandra messages. Okay. This is. What am I saying?
Will it let you map multiple repository types to one entity? Like instead of creating a Cassandra message and Postgres message, you have one just message and then slap on the annotation table and entity on it?
You know what? I don't know the answer to that, but I know that if I was managing a developer who do that, I would ask them to change it. But it doesn't sound like a good idea.
I'm just curious, yeah. So.
I don't know if it supports that, but I hope it doesn't. I wouldn't even bother to find out. I wouldn't even look for the answer because I don't want it to do that. But who knows? Maybe it does. Okay, so we have a Cassandra message here. So let's make the same thing, an interface for Cassandra message repository. It's an interface again. And I don't remember what kind it implements here. Code repository, okay. That's easy. Extends CRUD repository. Cassandra message. Okay, let's make this. We're going to go back to where we were previously and just replace this with the word Cassandra. It's done loading. Boom. So this resource is now there. I've integrated with Cassandra already. Not much code, was there? All right. Let's do the same thing for MongoDB and for Redis. I'm just going to write the classes, both of them right now. MongoDB message. Class. Redis message. I believe this one you call it a document. Again, we want those 4 fields. I'm going to put in both classes right now. Same time. I think it's called an ID. The Spring Data annotation instead. I think that works. Let me check here. Yep, that was right. Okay, and then let's go to the Redis message, which uses a different type of ID. We call it a Redis hash. So let me go back to my Redis message here. Redis uses, it's a key value store, so they use hashes. Space there. And again, use ID. Ready? Yeah. No, I'm just going to create those 2 interfaces. The class MongoDB repository. It's an interface which extends MongoDB repository. CRUD repository, MongoDB message on again. And then let's make one for Redis again. Redis message repository. Again, another interface. No, code repository again. That's it. When we compile, when we run these, they're both running. Let's call both of them real fast. Mongo. TV messages. Those are there. And then another one is Redis. Those are also there. They're empty collection, so there's nothing showing up there. But we're going to show. I'll show you how they work later. because I am not connected to any tower.
Oh, that's. Oh, you got one?
Yeah, I'm just worried I'm gonna lose the HDMI cable
Oh, okay.
if you go that route.
Let's see. Oh, yeah, right over here.
It should actually run faster now too, right? It's conserving power. Okay, so I got those 3 repositories in there that I could auto-wire into the application, and that are also exposed as REST repositories. So when you go back to the original POM, the feature to expose them like that is actually called REST repository, data REST. That's the actual feature that allows you to just map it like that. Oh, this is getting in the way. Okay, so let's see what's next. Message. So I wanted to model my message, which is going to be going across the wire. So I'm going to make a model class. Actually, an immutable model class. New model. Package. Private final non-ID. Private final string message. Structure. Those together for it. Like that. And then I want to write, where's my resources? I want to write a resource that I could post to that has a message, and will also have it'll respond with this message, but it will have a request too. Yeah, that'll work. So let me implement that real fast. Implementation, new package, resources, class, message, resource. I'm going to the path for this says JAX-RS. Messages. And then public response, JAX-RS response, that's right. Post, message, and I want a class that represents the payload. So I'm going to say create one message request. Now I'll just have a return response. Okay, build. How to create this create class. Let's make that part an API. IO. Create that package somewhere. Sure. Private string message is part of the payload. Header and setter assigns the message. It's part of the payload. This is just automatically converting JSON into that object. Message resource coming in here. This produces and consumes JSON. So produces media type. JSON. Good. Consumes it too. All right. now let's make a service that uses all of those repositories. New package services using sort of a layered architectural design here, kind of, except it's all in one application. Let's see. Message services. Simple. I used to hate the extension info. I don't mind it anymore. It's just the common in Spring development. So this will be a service, and it will have a method to post one message. Public string save one message. That string message. Actually, I don't like this. Have a return a message. So, yeah, that's fair. Let's say this is text. And then, well, this requires what? This requires all of those repositories here. So let's add the Cassandra repository, Mongo DB repository, the post press message repository.
Because you it's Postgres here.
Yeah, you left out the G.
Son of a gun. Okay. Change that right now. This message repository. So let's refactor that right now. Post. Yes. I think that's good. So that's been changed. Oops. We're gonna auto wire those in here. And how does this work? Okay, so first with Postgres, we're going to save that. So, okay, let's come up with a Postgres message. It's very boring, isn't it? We'll save that. We'll get its ID. We'll reuse that ID for the other messages. So, Uncle AD message. Read this message. Set ID. Read this message. Set message text. And Sandra. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are all there. Good. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are all there. Good. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 So those are all persisted. No, they're not persisted. That's persisted. That's persisted. Wow. And then, still one more thing I want to put in here. And that is a, what is this thing? Oh yeah. That's an important thing to have here. That's actually something that I haven't worked out how to do automatically with Spring Boot and Jersey, in that it doesn't automatically register your resources as endpoints. You actually have to do that manually. So I'm going to copy this class over here. Do that. Maybe name this. This is just resource, and it still doesn't run it. It's funny. Okay. I do want to return this message. Return new message. Okay. Text. Okay, now I want to figure out how I wired in the queue. So I'm going to cheat real fast. I just use a rabbit template. That's what it is. Sorry, I forgot that. Nice imports. Private, final object mapper. Private, final, private template. That's constructor parameters. So now these are initialized in here. Object template, convert and send. Is that the right message? I'm going to cheat real fast. Where's my service? Convert and send. Okay. Convert and send. LA Doug is the name of my queue. And it requires a byte string, so I will use the object mapper I will use actually, let me make this an object here. No. Write as bytes. This will wrap this with a runtime exception instead of that, because I don't know what I should do if it fails. So try catch, throw new runtime exception E. All right, I got that in there. And this is functional. Let's actually do all of the stuff that I said I would do. It's been less than an hour, but there's one feature that I didn't put in here that I really like about Spring Boot, and that is the external configuration. This value right here is a magic string. You know, any senior developer will tell you You shouldn't hard code something like that because we might have a different queue. They're right. You shouldn't. So let's fix that real fast. I will have a package called configurations. Already in there, huh? Project. New package. Configurations. And we want something to represent, I don't know, what should we call it? Application queue. Sure, why not? Or application properties? I don't know what you want to call it. Sure, let's call it application properties. Application properties. And let's put a queue in there. Private string queue. Etc. You have to annotate it with configuration properties. I'll make this a component. And I want to say that it's prefix. It's application. And I'm going to make a property that represents that. Application.queue. Oops, here, there we go. What that does is it's going to grab that value from my YAML and it's going to automatically inject it here. If I put an integer, it'll do conversion. It's type safe. And you could actually put the validation annotations here and it'll validate the values too. And it allows you to overwrite via the command line or system properties as well with the precedents that I gave you earlier. And you could even target a profile, make a config file that represents a certain profile and say, use this one instead. So you could have one for development, or you could even put it in your test cases and say, use this profile and it'll override it. They thought of every situation much better than anywhere else that I've seen so far. So I'm putting that feature in here. Let's go back to the app. Let's put that configuration property here. Private final application properties. Checker parameter, auto wired in there. Let's use that instead of LA jug. Here. I believe this will work. It's doing a lot. I wrote it pretty fast. I cheated, but I wrote a lot really quickly here. Let's make it.
Fingers crossed.
What's wrong here? It just restarted?
Yep.
All right. So I do have what's it called? The post. What is this application called again? Postman, yeah. That already has a payload ready to go in there. So let's see if it works. Oh, message is not found. What's up with that? What did I do wrong? Okay, let's debug this real fast. I'm surprised. Okay, so it's probably here, right? It is a component. It is the messages resource. It has a post, consumes and produces. And that's where I'm hitting, right?
All you did was change where it's configured, or
Okay, well, I do have it as a Jersey resource, right? And I am registering it, so.
And you have everything mapped to the root servlet because that's what you're doing.
Well, this isn't on the root servlet though. This is the Jersey part. The Jersey part should be in the root servlet automatically. I think it's hard and stop it just in case something funky happens. Then I'll try again and see what happens. I don't think this is the error, but I know that under pressure, I'm going to check this first. Still not found.
Does the screen show you what all the URL mappings that it'll handle?
Yeah, it does. All right, let's go back to the config. Let's start from there. Config. Okay. Let's check this config. Okay, that looks good. Messages resource. Component and path. Is that what I have here? Messages resource.
No component.
No component. That's what it
Okay.
is. Okay. Build, make.
Yeah.
Moment of truth. Still not found. Still not found. Maybe. Messages. Does that matter? Okay. Okay, let's go through this again. So I got the Jersey config. Okay. Extends resource. Did I do that? I copied it over, so it should be the same. Yeah. Did I put post on it?
I don't think you do.
That's it. All right, let's go again. This is going to be it. Oh, it's there, except I didn't actually do anything with this. So private message, actually, I still want to use the strategy design pattern. So let's make an interface here. New package. Services. Message. Service. Perfect. Implements that. Service. Pull the members up. Pull members up. Yeah, just that one. And then let's inject that into the resource. Wired it. And then message service, save one, create one message, get message X, and then let's return it in response here. And let's say that not blank, right? So this will give me a 404 if it's blank, which I think was the proper response here. This will actually save it. So now let's recompile. Am I going to finish before 9? I think so. The risk I thought along in this presentation was whether I could finish before 9. Okay, we got it. Yes. So it's saved in there. Now let's quickly hit our endpoints. You'll see Reddit's messages. Those are there. So ID one. Woohoo! It's a Redis message. Postgres message. Well, of course that one's there. Why? Messages. And it shows up in the connection as well. MongoDB messages. Shows up there. Shows up there. Cassandra messages. Shows up there. There as well. So all 4 messages are hidden there. I'm able to create one. And let's check our queue, RabbitMQ. Our message is there as well. So you think that could be done without Spring Boot? No way. Impossible. But with Spring Boot, you could. I mean, if I wanted to, I'm sure that if I scripted this to go against Couchbase or even Kafka and Elasticsearch, all of those could have been done. Give me another hour, I can figure out how to put those in Docker, make them as part of my container. You guys you think I could do that? Probably, right? At this speed. So, what I love about Spring and Spring Boot is they use dependency injection on elements of AOP that combined. They get complicated APIs and they simplify them and give you a really simple API that allows you to integrate with those other technologies and make them very usable. I mean, look how much code is in here. I mean, we have this repo right here. These repositories are just interfaces, but they have all that functionality. I could actually go, I actually have the curl commands here, I believe, on my cheat sheet. Let's insert a, I don't know what kind. Let's insert a Cassandra message. No, I don't have insert a Cassandra message. Oh, I do. I'll go to my command line. And I can't put 1 because I've already used that value. I'll make it 2. Even sort of like 8OS. How do you pronounce it?
Oh, ADOs?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Sort of.
Hypertext as transact. That whole thing.
Sort of like that. If I go here, they're both going to show up. Here. How much work did it take to make its repo? I mean, it's nothing. And if you model your entities right, you could actually have a very functional application. When I say entities, I'm talking about things that get persisted in some data store.
Domain.
Yeah, you can say that.
How do you go about changing like the core CRUD functionality if you wanted to do some additional logic?
So they do allow you to have different binder methods. But I think once you surpass a certain level of complexity, that it probably makes more sense to implement a service that uses a bunch of different repositories to do that complex logic, because this is for simple stuff right here. You know, create, update, delete. Real applications are not that simple. So you'd end up doing something more like what I did here. I have an endpoint, have a service that leverages all of those and does something complex. I couldn't do this in one interface, what it implemented right here. So that's what you'd have to do. There are a lot of rules on how to write these interfaces to add more functionality that is covered more in depth in their technologies. And they wrote these to be easily deployable, and even the cloud native version of Spring Boot is cloud deployable and works with distributed applications. What else is in this presentation? Let's see. Oh yeah. So I will put these slides online. These are the Docker containers that I integrated with. All I had to do was install Docker from, download it. I use all of my advanced knowledge to I'm joking around when I say that, to write this compose file, which is it's basically a domain-specific language that says, hey, I have an app that I want to call a DB and use this image and expose these ports and give it this environmental variable. I want a service called MongoDB, use this image, expose these ports, use this one. I want a service called Cassandra, use this image. That's actual. The image is actually on the internet, it downloads it all. You put up, it launches all those services. I mean, this doesn't take long. There was a presentation last month at November, how Docker improves the developer experience. Well, you don't need to call operations to say, hey, I need a server that does all this. You just make a little file like this, type up, they're all running. You saw me do it in front of you. It's pretty simple. So download Docker, use this file. These are the images that I used. I will make this link, this presentation on the LAJOC website, the slides as well. And are there any other questions?
How did you choose those ports in your Docker compose file? Just shows random numbers?
No, actually, I actually had to use the research part of research and development.
Those are all default port numbers, like
Yeah, they're all. I mean,
Postgres has.
yeah, they're all default port numbers, but I didn't memorize those. I had to actually go through their documentation to find out what those ports are. It was a little harder to figure it out for I think RabbitMQ. For the most part, when you go to these containers, like I think it'll tell you right there maybe. What is RabbitMQ? How to run it. Yeah, see, this one doesn't tell you the port. So I was like, oh, what do I do? I actually had to go through RabbitMQs. But the other ones, they tell you the port right there, which was exposed. They really simplified things. But all of these services that Spring Boot can hook up to have Docker containers. They're also really good to write. I feel like a Docker file is an excellent recipe for operations on how to configure a server. Okay, install Linux, get all these packages, now install SSH, generate a key, add this file here, okay, application's ready. They're really good instructions for that. They document that. So I think even if you don't intend to deploy to Docker, at the very least, they provide a good template for operations to use so they could set up a server for something. Any other questions?
You know, one thing I noticed when I played with Spring Boot a while back, and I remember, and there's a lot of magic that happens with the auto configuration and the conventions that they use. But when I would run into problems, I felt that I had to know like Spring how it really worked to track down some of those problems because they use like conventions that are normal, that typical Spring developer would use.
I agree with that statement. I actually worked somewhere where they were creating libraries that fit the mold of how a lot of these starters work, and
Yeah.
it's very abstract. You have all these annotations, like say.
Yeah, I mean, I looked up one of those enable configuration files, and
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
it's crazy what they do in there.
I agree with that.
So if you like, when one little thing goes wrong, it's literally magic you have to track down to figure out.
I mean, it's not magic. I don't like to use that word.
I know,
because
but I'm just saying, like, it feels like if you're new.
it is very specialized knowledge.
Yeah.
And it's not thing you'll find on the Java tutorial.
You talking about like building the machine itself, or?
No, when I was playing with Spring, when I was playing with Spring Boot, I had experience with Spring, but I just felt like at the time, if I didn't have the Spring experience, I could really get lost in how it did all of this configuration.
Spring Boot uses I guess it's the technique which they call auto configuration.
Yeah.
And
You're talking about using Spring Boot without having Spring knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
well, no, but
Yeah, it's more of a packaging thing.
But here's the thing, though: if you want to write your own library that's auto configured, that's the knowledge that he's talking about right now. That's I've seen code that does a lot of that. It is not straightforward code, but luckily, once that part is done, it's just abstracted away from you, and it's just a matter of having an annotation. Yeah. It's not difficult. You just have to go. So, start off with something simple. I don't have it memorized. That's a problem. So it was that different that I didn't remember it. I only remember that it was very abstract looking. Any other questions? Nope. Okay. Well, thank you for showing up to LA Jug. If there's any, I don't know what next time I'll meet, hopefully in 2 months. I am looking for speakers, and if you want to present, pitch to me. I hope you can, because otherwise it might be me again. I don't want to do it every 2 months. I want to find somebody else to do it, but it is harder to find speakers now. What do you guys think about this location? Was it maybe just working on describing where to park would help, or was it just too hard to park to come here?
It was fine. I mean, they were saying that I guess because it's raining, it was easy. There's like, maybe because of construction, there was a bunch of street parking where I am. Just someone walking.
Okay.
I've just never been in this area before.
Yeah.
For
I've
parking,
been
like I've
here,
been like
yeah.
up and down, but not like an issue. That's how it is every time you go to a new place, and not know what the area's like, so.
All right, I'm going to say bye to the people online. Let me turn the sharing off. Stop screen sharing. Yes. Okay, everybody. I'm ending the broadcast. Thank you for staying with us. I don't know if there's any messages here. Let's see. Do you guys want to? I'll give you a link to the presentation. How about that? Nope, that doesn't work there. Just go to the LA Jug website. I'll be there maybe tomorrow. Bye, everybody.